Welcome back to the webcast. We are 60 days away from the World Cup. Every Wednesday we are talking Premier League and Champions League, but right now we are on international break as players join their national team for the tune-up games to the World Cup that is 60 days away. We're going to talk about it. Our first World Cup episode. I'm Adam. That's Doug. Let's go! All right. Welcome back to the webcast, All Sports One Web, where on Wednesdays we usually do our EPL picks for the upcoming week, as well as recap any of the European soccer action that's going on. But currently in the world of soccer, we have what is called an international break. That is 2 weeks off in European side. The MLS doesn't really, follow these same breaks as the rest of the world. But from the European side, all of the club players are off if they got called up to play for their national team, whether that's in friendly games, like the U.S. will be playing against Japan this Friday in Germany, and then against Saudi Arabia in Spain a couple days later, or if that's in the Nations League tournament, which we're not going to go into much here. But they're basically, these games are used, these two games in these next 2 weeks, 2 to 3 games depending, are going to be used for teams and players to kind of figure out their squad, who's fit, who's ready, who needs to be given a chance, and who's coming to Qatar. We are 60 days away from the World Cup, the biggest sporting event in the world. Over 1 billion eyes will be on the World Cup in November. How pumped are you, Doug, that the U.S. are back in the World Cup finals after missing it in 2018?
The World Cup, 4 years is a long enough time for just the World Cup in general. But then when you miss one, it's 8 years. So, I'm pretty excited to finally have them back. I found myself rooting for, England last World Cup just because I watched the Premier League and I knew most of the players, and all that. Now I'm finally ready to actually cheer for my team that I want to win the World Cup. Whether we win or not, I'll still be rooting for them. But it's good, good to have it back.
Oh, yeah. So excited. And we've had to wait not only the 8 years because we missed the last one, but normally the World Cup takes place between the beginning of June and the beginning of July. It's a 30-month tournament. Now, this is the World Cup finals, and we'll get into this a little bit more detail, but the World Cup really is 30 days. It usually is in the summer. It takes place after the club season in Europe and really most of the other parts of the world ends and before the next one starts. So it's supposed to be right there. This is a little different because it is in Qatar. They can't have it in the blazing heat of the summer. They had to push it. It is now in November this year. So we've had to wait 8 years plus a couple months
and it's still
to get to this one.
90 degrees in December and November.
It's still going to be hot. They got a bunch of systems to try and combat that. It's going to be newly built stadiums. We're going to dive into all of that. So stick with us on the webcast as we get closer and closer to the World Cup, and our coverage, our detailed analysis, and our predictions will be coming in the next couple of months. And we're going to get into more of it, but you'll get to watch England versus the U.S. In the group stage games, as the U.S. have been drawn against England. So, you can't have it better than that. U.S. England, everyone wants to watch it. Last time was 2010. We took a point off them with Dempsey's goal in that one. So we'll see what we can do this year. But here on the webcast, we want to get you hyped up and ready to go going into the World Cup. And so today is our first episode of this kind of World Cup series. And we're going to be diving into the U.S. men's national team as we go along, especially with their games coming up against Japan and Saudi Arabia in the next couple of episodes. And as the team kind of gets put together before the World Cup, as Greg Berhalter kind of finalizes his roster and who he's going to bring to Qatar. But so today we're just going to talk about formatting and really kind of how the World Cup works and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to start off with just a little bit of some grouping. So this is the World Cup finals. And the reason why they call it the World Cup finals is because there is 2 years of qualifying that goes into making up these 32 teams in these 8 groups. And you qualify based on where your country is located. So the United States is in what they call the CONCACAF region, which is North America and Central America, really are the teams competing to get a spot from CONCACAF. You have European teams fighting against European teams, and South American fighting against South American teams, and then you have Oceania and Asia as well, and Africa. And so the way that works is each of those regions have their own formatting for who's going to advance, whether that is in South America, where you play every single team twice, home and away, which we're kind of used to in some other soccer formats like the Champions League, for example. And whoever accumulates the most points, in those top 4 or 5 spots will get a spot in this tournament, the World Cup finals. The U.S. qualified through CONCACAF, finishing 3rd overall behind Mexico and Canada. So that is how the U.S. was able to advance to the World Cup. And then based on all of this, once they get the 32 teams that qualify, 31 plus the host nation is automatically, they don't have to go through qualifying. They rank all of the teams by their FIFA ranking, which is just a kind of metric system that is similar to college football, where, back in the BCS era, where you, based on previous performances, you rank the teams, how they've been doing in different competitions. And that's how you get 4 different pots or 4 different difficulty levels. And group, pot 1 would be your top 8 teams. Pot 2 would be, the next 8, and so on and so forth. So that way you get a little bit disparity in the group stage setting. So you don't get, all the best teams all in one group. And the reason why they do that is because 2 teams will advance from each group after everybody plays each other 1 time. 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, and no points for a loss. And so that's kind of just a quick overview of the structure, and we'll be getting more into this as we go along through our World Cup series here on the webcast. But looking at these groups for you, Doug, which one kind of stands out to you as, maybe a group of death or an exciting one to watch outside of Group B, where we see England, Iran, US, and Wales?
I think that's going to be probably the toughest group for those teams, because I think England's going to make it out, but I think the US, Wales, and Iran, they're definitely going to be fighting for that second spot. And I think it's going to be pretty tough. The US, we're not notoriously great for soccer, and Wales is definitely a lot better. Historically they're better, but yeah, I think that'll be a good group. But I also think that Belgium, Canada, Morocco, and Croatia in Group F, I think that's going to be a really good group too.
Yeah, that is a super exciting one. You have Belgium, the team that seems to be in what people call the golden age, or the golden era of a national team, where when all the pieces and all the right players just seem to come in at the right age. When you look at Kevin De Bruyne, Hazard, even Eden Hazard's brother, Thorgan Hazard. You throw in Lukaku on top of that, and you just like Courtois in goal as well.
Champions League Vertonghen and Alderweireld, but
yeah, you add them as well. Little older now, yeah, exactly. But it seems like they've been having their golden generation for a couple of World Cups and just can't piece it together enough to actually, make a final or make a push to win the whole thing. Canada winning CONCACAF in the way that they did, where they dominated pretty much everyone, top to bottom in qualifying. Alphonso Davies, Bayern Munich, up and coming star here, leading Canada of all teams to the World Cup. First time in a long time for them. Morocco as well. It seems like that underdog team that can hang with the best of them. Yeah. And then obviously Croatia making the World Cup final in 2018, losing out to France. But
I'm curious to see how they, because, a lot of their players that were on that team, they may still be on that team, but they're 4 years older, and they were already a little aged on that team. So I'm curious to see if Modric and Mandzukic, and so I'm curious to see, how they do this time around, because Modric is not getting any younger.
Yeah, exactly. He's about 55 now and still magical feat though. So always exciting to see what he can do. Also the player of the tournament back in 2018, leading Croatia through all of those very tough games to the final, and just losing out there to France, who find themselves in Group D. And they are going through an injury crisis at the moment. Benzema, he's out. Pogba, he's out. Conte, he's out. And so that's what's really important, things to watch in these next 2 weeks. If you're trying to pay attention to these tune-up games for the World Cup, most of them don't have significant meaning in terms of winning anything or preparing anything. It's just for teams to really, their last 2 games before it's showtime in Qatar. So it's very interesting to see teams like France, who have these injury concerns, who they're going to bring for these 2 or 3 games that they're going to play, and how well they do, and how they can take that performance and go back to their club team for 2 months and build on that to maybe get selected and get a spot in that final roster that is going to Qatar. And please stick with us as we go through our World Cup coverage leading up to it, and then throughout the month of November, because we want to get you hyped and ready for the US. Today is more of the formatting stuff, but please stay with us on Wednesdays, 7 p.m. when we do our World Cup series, like we will be doing today and next Wednesday. One team that I'm super excited to watch is Brazil, who find themselves in Group G here. They got an interesting group with Serbia, Switzerland, and Cameroon, but they made the Copa America final, which is the tournament between all South American teams. They lost out to Argentina, but they've been, top 5 team in the world for the last 6 years by the FIFA rankings. And it just seems like everyone on their team is a forward that is just lighting it up right now. When you look at Neymar at PSG, Vinicius Jr. at Real Madrid, even your boy Richarlison getting 2 goals in the Champions League himself.
And you got Jesus for Arsenal.
Playing extremely well for Arsenal. And then you got, that great, middle and back line when you look at Marquinhos, Thiago Silva, Casemiro, Fabinho, Alisson in goal. Great core.
Alisson or Ederson, take a pick.
Yeah, right. Okay, here you go. Who do you pick for that one? Who do you got?
Oh, man. I don't know. I think they're both so good, but I think Ederson is a little too aggressive sometimes, and I think it works for City. But I don't know that it works for Brazil. I don't know. It's tough. You really can't go wrong. They're both world-class keepers, so I don't think you really can make the wrong decision, but I'd probably pick Alisson.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that's a great point that you made there about his kind of aggressiveness. You know that he likes to come out. We've seen it a couple of times, especially when you're looking at tournament play like this is. We all expect Brazil to be comfortable through the group, get out, and then, once you get out of the group stage, the top 2 teams advance, and then it's knockout from there on all the way through the final. It's 1 game. And we saw, we've seen Manchester City against, Liverpool, or, even the Champions League final against Chelsea, where Ederson comes out and kind of makes a little bit of a mess of it just because of how aggressive he is. And, 1 goal is the difference in these kind of knockout big stage games. So I would agree with you. I think Alisson has to be the starter in this one, despite Liverpool's poor play to start the season. I think he's got to be called up to be the number 1 there. A lot of great groups here. As I start looking
at them, they all seem pretty even.
Yeah, and that's what's very cool about the way that they do the pot system, drawing 4 different teams from so many different regions as well. You can't get teams from the same confederation in it, except for Europe, I think, can have 2 just because of the pure number of teams.
Group E has Spain and Germany, which will be tough.
Yeah. But they can't have more than that, so that's nice. You get, Costa Rica in Group E there, and Japan to kind of, that's what's so cool about this is you get. I love when teams that don't normally play each other. That's what's so nice about it. You really get to see different styles come through when you're looking at different sections of the world. The way that the South Americans play is different than, a team like Germany from Europe, which is different than a team like Japan. And it's just so great to watch that. Group H for me, I think epitomizes that when you look at Portugal, Ghana, Uruguay, and Korea.
Yeah.
Republic. Portugal, see what they can do with Ronaldo kind of on his last legs. But some great up and coming players when you still have your Bernardo Silvas and your Ruben Diaz's and your Bruno Fernandes, what's his name from Atletico? João Felix.
Which I really like him, by the way.
Yeah, he's great. I'm really interested.
Awesome.
He got subbed off last weekend. Goes, 35 minutes left in the game. Goes straight up the tunnel. Doesn't sit on the bench for the rest of the game against Real Madrid. Big rivalry there, and just goes straight up the tunnel. So that's interesting to see. Maybe he will be on his way out. And that's what also the World Cup made it so interesting over the past summer, because players who were qualified for this who weren't playing for their club team would want to move so that they could get some playing time. We saw some comments from Christian Pulisic yesterday and today about his time with Thomas Tuchel at Chelsea. Thomas Tuchel has been sacked, as we've talked at length and in great remorse and sadness that Thomas Tuchel has been sacked by Chelsea. But Pulisic definitely let his feelings known that he felt a little hard done by in terms of not getting the respect after putting in good performances to continue playing and getting minutes under his belt. How much do you think that hurts teams in the World Cup when their star players aren't playing regularly at the club level?
It's a catch-22 because they're going to be healthy. They will be healthy and they're not going to be tired from the grueling season and all that, but they could come out game 1 and hurt themselves because they're not fit. But also, it's not an easy game. It's not like you're playing by yourself. It's, golf, you can put in all the practice and it's just you and the ball. That's all there is to it. With this, you have to get into the flow of the game, into the speed of the game, because you have people trying to take the ball from you. You have, teammates trying to get open for you and get you open and all that. It's really gonna show, I think, in the first few games. Hopefully we can get it ironed out with these in this international break, but it's going to be tough. I mean, they don't play slow,
Game shape is definitely a thing that is completely different than your practice, your training shape, and anything like that. And then you heighten it even more when you talk about the World Cup.
Yeah, and he's our superstar.
Yeah, and
then we have commercials about him, and
all
the, and
that pressure
and
commercial.
He doesn't even play.
Yeah,
and it's like he really needs that. I would really wanted him a move for him.
Mm-hmm.
Because I like him. I think he's a good player, and I think he's good enough to start on most teams in the Premier League. But we need him. The USA needs him. So we need him to be healthy and in form.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's why I think Sergio Dest, the right back, projected right back for the US going to Qatar, was a player on Barcelona, kind of in a similar position. Xavi, the coach there at Barcelona, not too in tuned with playing him all the time. He gets his loan move on over to AC Milan, where he is getting a lot more game time for the Serie A champions there in Italy. So I think that was a big, reason why he, at a young age risked, going out on loan just to get more minutes for this Group B that is definitely going to be tough. We're going to be giving you all of our predictions, our World Cup picks once we get right before the tournament, get right up there once all the lineups have been selected. So again, stay tuned with us on that one. But I mean, off the bat, I mean, like you said, England look like the favorites to top the group there, and it's going to be a dogfight, I think, for second. Iran, always tough to break down. Wales with Gareth Bale can always be dangerous. And then the U.S., who have been doing well, but have been absolutely terrible on the road. In all of qualifying for the last 8 years, on the road has just been a nightmare and an issue for the U.S. Being predominantly a young squad, I think, is a big problem there. Now, everyone in Qatar will be on the road besides Qatar.
Right.
But I think that it's just a fact of traveling and not feeling the support at home, I think, is the issue. And I think that will still play a role. So it's very important to see how we perform in Germany this week against Japan, also a team qualified for the World Cup, and then Saudi Arabia in a couple days as we see them in Group C with Argentina, Mexico, and Poland. Messi this is going to be his last hurrah, most likely, in the World Cup. And they are the defending Copa America champions. Like I mentioned earlier, they took down to Brazil in the South American tournament to crown the best team in South America. And even though Brazil finished top of their qualifying group for the World Cup, Argentina were able to beat them in the tournament. And do you give Argentina their best shot with Messi to actually win, even though in 2014 they just lost out to Germany in the final?
I think 2018 was their best team. Really, I don't see them getting much better this time around. But they have Messi and they have a plethora of attackers, and Christian Romero's shown at Tottenham that he's a pretty solid defender, and that's always been their issues, was defending. So if he can kind of help shore up the back end there, we all know they can score goals. They just need to put it together, and they have too many superstars. So if they can figure it out, it's just like Brazil, there's just too many superstars. So if they can figure it out, I think they could put a run together. But it all depends on who's healthy for France.
Yeah.
And Belgium, really.
Yeah, and that's a great point. We will get more into, especially when we start, ramping up our coverage of the World Cup, we'll be getting more into our picks and how the structure works. But just to go over it again in summary, after these 32 teams have qualified, right, we have our 8 groups. The top 2 advance, 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, 0 for a loss. Whoever has the most points will win the group. Whoever has the second most points at the end of their 3 games will come up runners up. And the way that the next round will then break out, we see in the Champions League and other tournaments like the FA Cup and so on, that they do a random draw thereafter, with pot 1 being group winners and pot 2 being runners up. The World Cup works differently. We can actually plan out the entire road to the final based purely on the groups. And the reason why is Group A and B are paired. Group C and D are paired. E and F are paired. And G and H are paired. The winner of A will play the runner-up of B on, let's say, the left side of the bracket. The winner of B will play the runner-up of A on the right side of the bracket. And we do that with each of those pairs all the way through. And so if you look at a team like Argentina, and you mentioned France, how well France will do. Well, if France win their group and Argentina draw against Mexico and Poland and finish second, that means they will be playing France in their first knockout stage.
In the first knockout, which would be horrendous.
Yeah, exactly. We saw these teams play in the semifinal or quarterfinal 2018. And so, in Argentina, obviously the World Cup runner-up in 2014, France, the champions in 2018. And so That's insane matchup. And not only, but if they can avoid each other, let's say they both finish top of their group, they will not only not play each other in the first knockout stage, they will be on the opposite sides of the bracket where they can only then play each other if they both made the final.
Yeah.
And so when we get into it, it's very important. And especially with now, we can turn back our attention a little bit as we are going to go so in depth with the US as we go through all of our coverage here. So definitely we want you to be hyped and ready. All of you that don't follow soccer normally, please tune in here at the webcast every Wednesday, 7 p.m. so that we can get you hyped, prepared, and ready for this World Cup in November. I promise you it will be a spectacle that you will never forget, and you will want to tune in every 4 years for it, and maybe even follow the club game thereafter. But back to the U.S. in this Group B, paired with Group A. And that is an amazing draw because Group A has Qatar, who, if they were not hosting this, most likely, like every other qualifying cycle, wouldn't be in it. And not only are they in Group A, but they take the place of one of those top 8 ranked teams that we see in all of the other groups. They were placed in pot 1. And so that means if you can win your group, Group B, you push England to second, and you can push them to the opposite side of the bracket, so you won't have to play them again. And you can get the runner-up of Group A, which is already seen as a sort of weaker group.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is huge for a team like the U.S., a team that has never made a semifinal. The furthest we've ever made was a quarterfinal. And to get that good knockout stage game right out of the group is essential. We saw last time we played Belgium, and Tim Howard had to make 45 saves just for us to lose there at the end. So definitely important, and we will, be going more in depth there as we get on going. But who would you like for the U.S. to draw from Group A?
I mean, I would prefer Qatar, but it's not going to happen. But it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I think the Netherlands win the group, and then I think Ecuador finish second.
Okay. So
I mean, obviously, I'd probably rather play Ecuador then, but I don't see us winning the group. So I think if the U.S. makes it out, we play the Netherlands.
Play the Netherlands. Yeah, that would be a very interesting game there. Netherlands always seem to do well, 4 times bridesmaids, but never champion of the World Cup. World Cup started back in 1940. It played every 4 years since then, and we have only had 7 different teams hoist the trophy. So it is a very select few that are able to win it, and only Spain since 1998 has been a team win it for the first time. So and that was back in 2010. Everyone else was winning their second, their fourth, their third, or so on and so forth since 1998. So it is a good group of 7 teams that you could bet some money on to be the favorite to hoist it. But never a bad time for the U.S. to pick up number 1. Let me tell you, especially with the draw that they got, how amazing that would be. So we're definitely going to be diving into this more as we go on. Today was just kind of a quick little format video, get you a little bit more comfortable with how the World Cup works. We'll be diving in next week into the U.S. as we have some of these tune-up games under our belt, and let's start to answer a little bit more of the questions that Greg Berhalter is obviously going to have to deal with Qatar. Goalkeeper situation up top for striker position, who's going to be chosen. We had that same conversation with Allison versus Ederson. The U.S. definitely have a similar conversation, maybe not at the highest level like that, but between Turner and Zach Steffen, as well as some of the injury news that goes on through these next 2 weeks. So we'll be discussing all of that next Wednesday, 7 p.m. here on the webcast. This Friday, we will be returning with college football and our picks. Doug will be doing that with you guys on Friday, especially after my terrible Premier League NFL picks that I have done by myself. Absolutely terrible. I'm what am I, 8-11 in my last 19 picks. Not very good there. So Doug definitely been carrying us. Will carry us on Friday. Make your account on ESPN Pick'em for college football. Join Doug at 7 p.m. here on the webcast for his picks as we enter week 4 of college football season. It already seems like it's flying by. 1/3 of the regular season kind of going to be wrapping up here on Saturday. Super quick. And we will be then joining you next Tuesday for NFL and another World Cup podcast next Wednesday, 7 p.m. So come back and join us. All the artwork that you see here on the webcast is presented by Smiley Sports Artwork. The link in the description for that Instagram account. Go check her stuff out. For all of us at the webcast, All Sports One Web, I'm Adam, that's Doug, and we will see you on Friday.
See you guys.